clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
Folks, what I brought you today might be the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. On his very first visit after becoming mayor, Zorhan Mamdani just did something no one before him has ever pulled off. He walked straight into a meeting with Donald Trump, the so-called president, and humbled the wannabe strongman right to his face. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why Trump is suddenly doing all of this, and how Mamdani's win changes the game completely. It really helps the channel if you like the video and subscribe. Now let's get right into it.
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
What we did is we discussed crime, more than ICE per se. We discussed crime, and he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime, and I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually, people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
And right on cue, Trump did what he always does. He ran from the actual topic. First, he called Zorhan Mamdani a jihad, then a communist, then a socialist. He threw every label he could find, hoping something would stick. But then, out of nowhere, in classic Trump fashion, he suddenly switched and said Mamdani is a good person and that they have things in common. Let's be clear, there is nothing in common here, not even close. Trump is talking about mass deportations and ripping families apart, while Zorhan Mamdani is talking about every New Yorker, regardless of race, background, or status, having the right to live with dignity and safety. 2 completely different visions, 2 completely different Americas.
Mr. President, Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zorhan Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I don't, but she's out there campaigning, and you know, you say things sometimes in a campaign.
Isn't that sort of
she's a very capable person,
Isn't
but
that a
you really have to ask her about that. But I don't particularly. I think I met with I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again. And I can say again, because New York was great.
Why did you fly here? Aren't trains greener?
I'll use every form of transit, and I want to make sure that they're all affordable in New York City, and that's why making buses fast and free is a centerpiece of our campaign.
There is a bus that goes.
Well, but I know, but it'd be fluid. That's a lot quicker too. You know, I mean, he's working very hard. For him to be, that's a very long drive. I'll stick up for you. You know, the plane takes.
And remember when Zorhan said he wanted to make buses free for New Yorkers? Trump mocked him. He called it unrealistic, a lie, something that would never happen. But now, suddenly Trump is saying he'll help him do it. What a coincidence, right? Except, it's not a coincidence at all. There's a reason Trump is flip-flopping this hard, and once you hear the rest of this story, you'll understand exactly why he's doing it. Let's keep going, because it gets even crazier.
30 minutes and driving takes you a long time.
It sounds like you had a productive discussion, but just days ago you referred to President Trump as a despot who betrayed the country. You said you would be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the President is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. But maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together. Yes, please.
Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say.
Holy cow. Did I hear that wrong? Or is something seriously off here? Because remember when Trump supporters were screaming that 40% of New Yorkers are going to flee the city now? Remember that fear-mongering? Well, now Donald Trump, their own president, is on camera basically saying he'd be happy to live there himself. You can't make this up. The same crowd that said New York is finished is now watching their leader praise it like it's his dream home. I'll be honest, Trump executed his plan flawlessly. It was like watching a master manipulator sit across from someone who's actually trying to govern. A master craftsman versus a novice whittler. And what's wild is that every political commentator on Twitter is applauding it, acting like this is just how politics works. But no, this isn't normal politics. This is strategy, calculated distraction, classic Trump theater. Here's what's really going on. Trump knows the whole MAGA brand is collapsing. The polls are showing it. The base is shrinking. People are walking away. And if you need proof, look no further than Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of his loudest loyalists, now distancing herself from him because even she can feel the shift. Trump isn't changing because he had a revelation. He's changing because he sees the numbers, he sees the momentum, and he's panicking.
I do tend to think that overall the true believers are fewer and farther between. And she was a true believer when it came to Donald Trump. And I think that part of her never thought it would get this bad with the president. And even when she was speaking out against him, I don't think she thought that he would personally attack her. And of course, as we know with President Trump, almost always loyalty is a one-way street. And she learned this the very hard way as a true believer who then essentially got excoriated by him online. And I will tell you, I was talking to people who were close to her who were telling me that she was getting threats nonstop. I know she posted about this. And then you had President Trump, even with that, saying that she was playing herself or portraying herself as a victim.
And deep down, Trump is basically on roller skates right now, sliding all over the place. And that's what so many people completely fail to see. They think he's in control. They think he's playing chess. But the truth is, he's scrambling. And here's by far the best explanation for what's really going on.
This man is meeting this man. There are 1,400 mayors in the United States, and less than 1% of them gets invited to the White House. This meeting is very strategic. Right now, President Trump's polling numbers are down in the low 30s, and he's looking for a way to boost his approval. Enter the newly elected New York Mayor, Zorhan Mamdani. And Trump stands to gain by associating himself with the rising star. He's effectively borrowing Mamdani's shine. Trump benefits the most because he's the one who needs to lift his public perception. By standing next to a well-liked, newly elected mayor, he hopes to capture some of that positive energy. This meeting is all about optics, 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 optics. When your own star is dimming, you stand next to someone who's shining bright. Truth has no part of y'all. Be well.